Hey folks, check. Are we live? Are we here? Are we actually live on the Polychrome channel? Let me know. Do we have audio? Chat is coming through. I can see. Hey. We're ready. Hey, great to see you. You guys know this guy right here in the chat. Amazing guitarist. Great to see everyone here. So let me know how it's sounding, and we'll jump in because we have quite a lot to get going through. And at the end of today, we're going to do a bit more of a Q&A, and maybe throughout the session, you guys can think of some questions. If you'd like to type those questions ahead of time, try and do a Q colon so I can search for them later. So Q colon like that in the chat. But the idea is of today's session is to really get a great lead tone dialed in that sounds great on a record or a live stream or even in a live environment, because sometimes you do need to dial in your tones a little differently for a live situation versus a track. When you crank things up, you get a little bit more kind of inertia, and volume makes your guitar do all sorts of fun things. So let's give it about 30 seconds or so, and I'll check the levels over on the tablet here, and then we'll dive right in and start creating some tones. Sounds all right. Also, this hey Richard, this is a little bit of a test. I know I asked a bunch of people on Discord what would be a good day, what would be a good time to go live, and this was kind of like the average of all of the feedback. It could be that this is a really bad time, and some people in the US are just waking up and haven't even had their coffee yet. Some people in the UK are heading home, so we'll see. But we'll give it a shot. So I think for the tones that I'm going to use today, in terms of the products, we're going to use Nunchuck and Lumis for the most part. And the reason is with those products, you can take the amps in so many different directions. And there's going to be a lot of things that I tell you that will be really, really useful. Sometimes you'll have a tone and it's like, I wanted to do this type of lead tone, but you're really, really struggling to get it there, and you're not sure why. And I think with Lumis and Nunchuck, you've just got so many options of taking your tones in different directions, and it covers a lot of ground for dialing in a tone. Some people are still in the office, says Luca. Well, Luca, we definitely appreciate the extra time in the office, and let me tell you guys, some very, very cool things are coming very, very soon. Hey, Mike, those amps are the Swiss Army knife of tone. You can have it all. Indeed. So let's dive in, and I'll take you through some of my top tips. So the first thing is getting the gain sorted. How much distortion? How do we get the distortion? What's the difference between just cranking the gain here and choosing a drive pedal? It has a huge impact on your tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off today with just the default presets. So that way, if you have Nunchuck, or in just a moment we'll use Lumis, that way you can totally follow along. I'm not starting off from any specific preset, although there are hundreds of presets in these plugins. We're going to start off with a default tone here. So firing up Nunchuck. Just who doesn't love Nunchuck? It's that just instant smile. You hit the chord. Okay, one thing I did just notice is we might not be streaming in ultra low latency, which I normally stream at in the McRocklin channel. So we might actually have like a 20-second delay, which I'm totally not used to. I'm used to like a 1-second delay. So the chat will be slightly behind, but shouldn't make much of a difference, I hope. Right, so yeah, so the first thing is it's really about when you dial in a great lead tone, it's like how much saturation do we want? How much gain do we want? Now I have a track that I'm going to jam along to for you guys here. Some of you might recognize it when the beat kicks in. It's a track called Italian Disco, but we'll get to that in a second. So right out the box, it's very low gain right now, right? It's on the vintage channel. Obviously, we can use the modern channel for a little bit more gain, but let's use the vintage channel and figure out how we can push that into the type of gain that we want. So with Nunchuck, we have the two different gains, and they actually have a slightly different tone because they're placed in different parts of the signal chain. Now, if we're going to use a drive pedal, it's not just going to add more gain, it's actually going to filter the tone. So for example, it's going to cut out some of that low end at the same time. So let's try the Green Mamba, which is more like a gain pedal. It's right in the middle of everything. You can hear right away, even though I don't have a lot of gain on, it's still giving me a little bit more of a little bit more attack. And I feel for a lot of my type of gain tones where I like a little bit of aggression, I really like that. But if you wanted a smoother lead tone, then you could push the gain on the amp a little bit more and perhaps take the level down a bit on the Green Mamba and use more of the drive. And that will give us a slightly different type of tone. And that's why I love our amp designs, because they're so versatile. They give you all of that control of a real amp, a real pedal. And what that allows you to do is to really come up with tones and feels that work really well for you. They're not based on NAMs and snapshots and stuff. So really good if you like to play around and dial in your own tones over a period of time. So let's go with like that sort of boosted gain setting with a little bit of Green Mamba, more level. I think on a track like this, we're going to need even more gain, so let's just push that. And for now, I'm going to take the gate off. That allows me to really feel, when I'm not playing, how much gain is actually coming through. That's getting in the right ballpark of the gain. I think we could probably push it even more. Hey, look at that, Mr. 2539. That's a wonderful name. It's good to see you, mate. Yeah, I kind of like that. So what that's doing now is it's giving me that a little bit of attack on the notes, but when I play on the lower notes, you can hear we're getting that little bit of saturation. It's not too tight. If I wanted that, then I would use maybe something like Kabamp, which is a little bit brighter. It's a little bit more cutting. Or I'd use Storm Drive and really filter out those low frequencies. And to do a comparison, you hear that the sort of pick attack is right there. Where with the Green Mamba, because it's not as aggressively filtered on the low end, we kind of get that more of a saturation type of thing. And in this case, I kind of really like that. It plays into Nunchuck's strength a lot, which is just that really nice, full, rich lead tone. So what I usually do is I kind of get the gain in the right ballpark, and then I set the gate. Now, one very common mistake that I think a lot of people do with the gate is they set the gate for not touching the volume pot on my guitar. So with me, I always set the gain for how it works when you've rolled off the volume pot, right? So what that means is I don't have that sort of start and stop type of thing, unless I want that really aggressive gated type of sound, or even more so. Kill gate in Graphene and Nutcracker is great for that, but the gate that's in Nunchuck is a little bit more generic, front of the sort of signal type of thing. But yeah, I like to set the gate for when your guitar's rolled off, not up like that. So a lot of people are like, I want it silent when it's like that. And I think it's better to think about it when you roll your volume off instead. Question, new plugins. Yes, we have some amazing new products coming real soon. Some of the most exciting things you probably have ever tried as a guitarist. So we're very excited for spring and summer. It's going to be a relentless. If only the sun in the UK was as relentless as our upcoming release schedule. Very excited. So, okay. Question N2, do you prefer the standard or the original? Right, well, we'll come back to some questions. And good for putting the Q colon if you're just joining us. If you do Q colon in the chat, then I'll search up for those specific questions right near to the end of the stream. The session today, we're looking at about 60 minutes or so. So we'll wrap through the next parts of it, and then in just a little while, we'll get into some Q&A stuff as well. All right. So we've got a nice amount of gain there. It's kind of balanced. It's not too tight. It's not too aggressive. What is next? I think the next thing to really think about is like, let's play along to a track. Let's think how much cut we have. Let's try it. Okay, it's not, I mean, you got to bear in mind our speakers are like generally very, very good. So it's not a million miles away, but I do think it needs a little bit more kind of cut on that top end. So this is where we're going to play around with the treble, the presence, and also check out the speaker voice edit, see what the filtering's doing and whatnot. And even we can jump into the shape EQ as well. So what is the difference between turning the brightness up or the treble here or doing it with the EQ? Because the polychrome amps are very, very interactive in terms of the signal chain within the amps, you get a very different type of brightness when you're using the treble or the presence in an amp, just like you would a real amp. And the shape EQ and the mastering EQ is more of a post-processor. Although Shape EQ does have a very cool trick where you can split it and have it pre-post. So you can basically imagine in the pre-position, it's like a stomp box. You know, a lot of people, they love to have like a 7-band graphic EQ on their stomp board, on their pedal board, and use as a stomp box. So with Shape EQ, you do have that option of using pre-post switching to give you that flexibility. So pre-position is in front of the amplifier, so we could really use it to add a lot of gain, but you can obviously shape that gain, which is really, really powerful. For now, we're going to stick to the post position and just try the treble presence and some post shaping, just to see if we can get that tone to cut through a little bit more. I want to show you just one thing that's really noticeable real quick on Lumis. I mentioned the channels are like very, very interactive, and what I mean by that is if we reset to this default tone and we go to the lead channel here, when I crank up the gain, because all of the tubes in the amplifier are very reactive, listen to the brightness. Super cool. So playing with the gain on products, Nunchuck does it as well, but in Lumis you especially notice that brightness really opens up as the tubes get worked even harder, and that is really, really cool because you can use the gain to give your tones a little bit more cut, and it might mean that you don't use an overdrive pedal and use the tight switch with more gain, just like turning the tight and maybe some boost and some gain. Just real quick to give you guys that own Nunchuck a little insight on what the difference is between boost and jump. So boost is the circuit boosted, but when you use the jump switch, it's boosted, but there's also an extra 10 dB or so of brightness in between the tubes. So if you are playing with tones like that have a single coil, let me just turn the Tube Screamer Green Mamba type of drive off for a second. Now if I boost it, we get more gain, but listen to the difference when I use the jump. You hear we have much more of that single coil split come through. So the main difference between boost and jump, similar amount of boost, but the jump has an extra EQ circuit and is placed in a different part of the signal chain, so slightly different. If you want loads and everything, you can put them both on together. Very fun. You could even tighten that up as well, of course, but let's keep all of those switches off and go back to the original tone and work on the brightness. You can hear the first gain has a little bit more impact on the brightness, kind of like Lumis did. So that means I might want to keep that second gain down a little bit and crank that first gain up. Now, because this Green Mamba's in the front of the signal, let's play around with that tone, because that's going to give us a little bit more pick brightness. Okay, so that's really coming through. So let's try that with the track now. We've got a little bit more presence, some more treble going on. We've cranked the first gain, a little bit more brightness here. Still even haven't touched the post EQs or anything in the speaker voice edit. Let's see where we're going. Yeah, that's working. That's got everything that I want there. It's got sustain, but when I come off the gain, I can let go of the strings and the gates kicking in just enough to control things. So from a brightness perspective, I'm pretty good there. So one thing you should always think about though is how much of the bass is coming through on your tones. Now you can see by default, the vintage channel speaker is like filtered a little bit, but on some presets, it might not have any filters. So a quick, easy way to just sort of have a little audio check on that is to hit a chord, let it ring out, and just really whack it up to full and bring it down. So around 4.7 or so is like, okay, that's probably got enough bottom end that it's going to work with the track. So that's the sort of gain and the sort of brightness. Now, when you're thinking about brightness, you could also include the speaker choices. Now, when you're trying different speaker choices, my approach to like selecting one, if you think like Nunchuck, it's got 20, Graphene I think has 10, Nutcracker has 10, and they're all fairly different sounding to each other. And I think what a lot of people do is they kind of look for a speaker that is their instant favorite. What I do with the speakers is I listen for just one or two characteristics that I really like from it. And then I think, let's say, for example, a certain speaker, it sounds quite bright. Is that brightness something that would be very difficult to achieve with the amp and EQ? Is it a unique brightness? Is that sort of mid-range bark something that would be difficult to achieve, because the rest, we have so much flexibility in the polychrome plugins, we can shape it, right? So for example, we can say, if a tone has too much mids, but we love that unique brightness, with Speaker Voice Edit, we can massage the tone back in. So let's try that, for example. So we're trying the Vintage Speaker 1 and it's working really well, but let's try, say, something from the modern channel, which is probably a bit more aggressive, and it might have some frequencies that we like and some that we don't like for this tone. Now, my worst speaker for this tone is probably 4. It's got a lot of overtones. It might work really good when we switch to the modern channel, because right there we're using the vintage channel with that modern speaker number 4. But let's see if we can work with that for a moment with a Speaker Voice Edit and get it to sound really, really great. So that way we end up with like a characteristic that might work really well. So if you're not familiar with Speaker Voice Edit, you just hit this edit button here in our suites and you can start dialing in. Recently, we added the paintbrush mode so you can quickly pull out some of those mid-range frequencies without having to do it one by one. All right, so far too much, you see, so less is more. There's a little sort of top end bitiness going on there. We can find that. I like a little bit of that because that's going to help the guitar cut through. Right, now we're into that lower mids and it's a little bit muddy, right, for a lead tone. Okay, let's compensate that volume a little bit. Turn it off. You see, we made a complete transformation of that speaker with just a few cuts here and there. And if we go back and forwards. Hello, Major. Great to see you. So that is modern speaker 4. Now, if we go back to vintage 1. Could work. Whereas before, when we just chose that speaker, we're like, that's the worst choice for this particular tone. So that gives you an idea what you can do with Speaker Voice Edit. And what I, again, like to do with that is to really look for, I've got someone looking for the Wi-Fi here, is to look for those fun frequencies that I think might be challenging to dial in, you know, those unique bends that we've incorporated in the speaker chains. So let's think about how we can really bring some excitement and width and ambience to that tone. So I'd like to start with just a little bit of room. In fact, let's just go back to the vintage 1 speaker. I like to start with a little bit of room because it's a nice way of gently introducing some space. You can hear it really kind of sort of spilling into the stereo image there. And again, you can feel when it's a little bit too much. Might be really great for like a low gain, you know, guitar shop type of sound, but in this case, we just want that amp in a room feel. Now, if we want more excitement than that, we can look at spread and also wide. I think we should play along to the track and try both and just see what really works. And then, of course, once we start adding reverb and delay and fine-tuning it, hi, Sean, great to see you. That's when we're going to sort of see exactly how much spread and width we want on the tone. Let's try it, though. Let me try again without falling off the fretboard. Here we go. Try it with the wide on. So I feel like, I mean, I love wide and it's really great for solos. And it's very, very tight. A lot of sort of stereo enhancers and wideners, they add this kind of double note trigger thing to create. It's almost like an offset of delay. We've got this really nice wide button that makes the sound wide, but without that sort of doubling type of effect. But I think a little bit of spread and a little bit less room would be the way to go here. And I think we'll take that speaker back to a little bit more filtered. Just a little bit if we go too much. Because I kind of want the tone like in the center. Right there sounds good. That's working. It's got everything that I want. It's got that feel. It's kind of sitting nicely in the stereo image. It's not too wide, and it's giving me that sort of space between the tracks. So I think the next thing is really the ambience, the left and right. And with reverb and delays, it's really easy to overdo it or to have too much that's unfiltered. And what I mean is really those thick and heavy delays. So for a good lead tone, this is my general approach. Quite filtered. I personally prefer Pong left and right on the delay, and quite filtered for the treble and the bass. And you can hear that the ducking is on, so I'm going to play with that wet-dry mix here. The feedback and the ducking, just to see how much of that we really need. Ducking, if you're not familiar with it, when you play, we'll just duck the delay down. And when you stop playing, it'll come back up. So it's really, really good for keeping the focus on your playing, but still adding some supporting ambient around your notes. Okay, so delay usually does disappear quite well in the track. So I'm going to just give that a little bit more, but turn it off for now so we can play with the reverb. Again, I want, personally, a longer tail, but I want a lot of the bass out of the track. You know, the bass on the track is quite dominant, the beat's there. So that kind of thing. It is ducking awesome. So that is kind of working, but there's one thing that I like to do on top of that. And for a lot of my lead tones, I really like to use the final compressor. Normally, I'm not a big fan. Hey, Luke, have a great day. And looking forward to checking the work that's been going on. I will do right after we finish up here. So with high gain tones, normally, unless it's on the front end, like more of a fusion, legato type of tone, I don't usually use compression. But for lead tones like this specifically, I love to use a little bit of the final compressor on the output, because what that does, specifically in this case, it's going to help me get more of that reverb to explode up. So check this out. There you go. So when I stop playing, the reverb really dives up, right? And again, it's like it's a good way of adding that excitement, but not muddying up your notes, right? Because we want to keep the notes coming through nicely. That's the sort of balance and act. If I have loads of reverb and loads of delay, unless it's a creative choice, it's going to get lost very easily. So we've got a reasonable amount of reverb, but we're compressing the final output now, and we've got some ping pong delay that's heavily filtered, but it's also ducked. Let's hear how that sounds together. So right there might be a really nice switch up. If I had that tone and I have this wide assigned, the second part of the solo right here, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Might be great to kind of give your guitar tone as well as the playing that question answer. And that's an awesome thing to do because it really keeps the listener like listening and really engaged in the solo lines, and they become more like solo hooks as opposed to lines. So I do that a lot where I have the main tone for the first section a little bit more centered, and then the answer will be a bit wide. And in this case, all we need to do is keep the exact same tone, but just turn that wide button on and off. So we're starting off with just this. Second part. You hear it? Works really well. Now, overall, I think that's working super. I just think it's got a tad bit too much reverb on, but overall, like, we could shred with that track. We could jump into the riff. Works, right? Let's try it. Let's try the second solo, the same tone. Maybe this time we'll start with the wide on. It's like it's ready for the record with no processing required. You know, I would just print it. Only thing I would do is I would just change the level, give it a little bit more volume so the solos are jumping out, but that's a that's a very simple fix. So right there, we've kind of got everything covered. We've got the right amount of gain happening, the right feel, and we haven't even touched the shape EQ, but I think if anything, we could push that top end a little bit more. Just a little bit of sizzle on the track. Yeah, tiny bit of sizzle. and we are good to go. You could, of course, adjust it to your taste, but I think in this case, not much more is required. You know, we're using the default vintage speaker 1. All the work's coming from the amp. Tiny bit of sizzle on the top end. We could try that speaker that we dialed in. Was it number 4? See how that sounds for reference. Let's try the whole thing with that speaker. Yeah, it's a different vibe, and it just shows you just how much impact those speaker chains have on the vibe of the solo. Kind of digging the vintage 1 speaker the most for this. So that kind of gets us up to about 35 minutes or so so far. So any questions on all of this? If you want me to do something similar with Lumis, let me know. Nutcracker and Graphene are instantly a little bit more hard-hitting. For example, if we jump over to Nutcracker or Graphene here, some of the tightening in Graphene, it's just tight from the get-go. Not crazy tight, maybe like Nutcracker. So Graphene and Nutcracker are like best friends. Definitely got some of that heavier energy on the tone, so we're gonna need to sort of take some of that out, maybe smooth the top just a little bit. Yeah, a Lumis lead preset. So let me go right at it from the very start, and we'll see if we can use all of these approaches that we just thought about whilst we were dialing in. So we'll start from the very beginning. I'm going to go back to the initial preset. Yeah, and fire some questions in now, and I'll search for all the questions with Q:. If it's a question on tones, audio interfaces, polychrome in general, whatever it might be, start getting those questions in, and then soon we'll start getting into some of the chat. So, right, so with Lumis, it's very interesting because the rhythm channel can make a great lead channel, but by default, it's a little bit softer. So for the sake of today, I'm going to jump into the lead channel specifically where it's got more gain initially, and I'm going to start by actually auditioning speakers. Okay, I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to use probably the drive on the modern mode for a little bit more cut. And I'm going to work on the feel first, not the actual tone. Going to find some of that sizzle. For this tone, I want to be a little bit smoother. Okay, I'm going to get the similar settings to the delay that I was using. Filtered, ducked, and a bit of feedback. Less top end. This is like a speed run of lead tones and Lumis. Okay. And then the filtered was more like the space. Probably filtered. Definitely less required on this one. Troll. That's a that's a great question. Okay, now we're going to work on the gain tone. It's quite a different EQ to Nunchuck. So there's like a low mid thing happening, which I'm going to use the shape EQ to pull out. I've already scooped some lower mids here, but there's something else. And I had a little bit of compression and some spread, right? Let's hear how that sounds. So that's already pretty close. Probably a little bit more, yeah, some filtering on that bottom end, and maybe just a little bit more filtering on the reverb. Now it's really interesting because the EQ in Lumis is very different. It's very, very powerful. Hey, Rad Brad. So you can hear, actually, as I crank the mid and treble, the amp really reacts. So the reason for that is on Lumis, there's another tube circuit after the EQ section. So it's not just like we take an amp capture and we go, okay, let's put some digital EQ after it. None of that type of thing really happens in our plugins. So what that means is, in this case, we can use that mid band of the amplifier to drive that secondary tube section, and we get more than just mids. We get like all these upper harmonics coming through as well, which is really interesting. Now, if I turn off that drive pedal and back the gain down, then you hear more of the original mid-range sort of band. Ooh, that's nice, yeah. I wonder if we could get a plus 12 and minus 12. Duo shift is awesome for those low gain riffs. Very cool. And of course we have vibes in Lumis, so we could really push the yeah, so much fun. But you get the idea. The EQs are very, very interactive. So what looks like mid, when you start cranking up the gain and stuff like that, it starts to spill out into some really unexpected, nice frequencies. So what you could kind of do is really push the mid here and then remove some of that sort of mid-range with the shape EQ. So again, you know, we've just created like 3 or 4 different types of lead tones just with Lumis on the fly, just on the back of Sean saying, create as a lead tone. Very, very cool. All right, so I'm going to search in the chat now for all questions that you guys have put in so far. So Q:, I did see a question just scrolling back a little bit, which was about, I have an A string and I'm trying to recreate Tosin thump. What plugin and settings? So for that type of tone, I think if you want, it depends if how much gain you want on your tone. I would say it's going to be difficult to beat Nutcracker. It works right out the box incredibly well with 8 strings. But when you use Killgate with compression with low gate tones, in fact, there's some 8-string specific tones. I think they're in low gain. Yeah, there's definitely some low gain specific tones that work really well for the all the thumping stuff. You know, when Tosin uses his 2 and 4 split position, Nutcracker's really, really good at articulating those kind of percussive thumping tones. But if you want the clean side of Tosin's palette, I would say Lumis, the clean channels are really, really great on Lumis. Lumis is this guy here. Oh, that's just a logo. But you know, the one that I was using just before on the speedrun. It's great at the clean stuff, and it's got the compressor with the wet-dry balance. So for those percussive tones, I think it's really nice to have something that's very, very punchy, very squashed. But also, you do want to blend in some of that compression, and the compressor that's on Lumis, unlike the current compressor on Nunchuck, which is, it has the amount and the output, so it's great as a boost and as a sort of generic compressor. But if you specifically want punchy tones, having that mix and tone within the compressor is very, very useful for those kind of modern split type of cleans, right? So let me search through all of the Q:, and we'll see if everything has been answered. So Dan was asking earlier if I prefer the Strandberg N2T standard or original. Now, I've been using this standard for, gosh, I don't even know how many hours, because it's obviously got passive pickups, so I don't need to worry about the batteries running down, although the batteries do last an incredible amount of time, like more than 200 hours of playing. But yeah, both really, really work. If I had to choose one, I might be more tempted with the Fishman pickups, because I love the sound of Fishman pickups. They're very clean, they're very articulate, they work really well on live and recordings. But the Seymour Duncans that's in the standard, all fine, you know, very, very good. And this is still a very lightweight guitar with a basswood body, so that's my answer there. Okay, also a question on tunings. Yeah, whenever I play 6, I just have standard tuning. I don't tune down, but I was thinking maybe one of the older Strandbergs that I have sent with the McRocklin Fishman pickups, maybe I'll do something wild like block the bridge and put it in B standard. Could be fun. So we'll see how that goes. New plugins, yes. Mentioned earlier, we've got an incredible lineup coming over the spring and summer, and some very, very, very exciting things just finishing off and in motion. So we couldn't be more excited. Okay. And of course, Troll answer asking how to get there. So guys, let me know if you do have any questions. I'm caught up on the saved questions. If you have any tone questions, any questions in general, let me know. And we'll get into that. Let me check my list and we can see. Okay, one other thing I was going to show you is, bear in mind, sometimes I'll have to create more than 200 presets for the products. And the one thing that I love to do is to kind of get 2 or 3 tones from the same process. So what that means is I might build a tone that sounds really good, then I'll make a low gain variant, then I'll make a higher gain lead tone variant, but each time I'm not starting from the very beginning. So if we took that as an example here, let's say we go into Nunchuck and we speed into making a heavy tone preset like, I don't know, like Chase. We see a preset called Chase, I think was one saved. Heavy, Chase. Okay, so let's say, for example, I just finished dialing in this tone, and this is how it sounds. Beautiful heavy tone. Nunchuck's such a versatile amp, really, really nice. So you can hear there it's actually using the modern channel, and it's paired up with a modern speaker. And that's kind of like how they are ideally set up. But again, there's no rules like before we were using the vintage channel with the modern speaker, right? So getting back to the point here, if I was to take a preset like Chase and I wanted to make that a lead tone, the gate's a little bit too choppy for me because it's really trying to be a bit tighter. Yes, this live stream will be saved, so if you're tuning in late, it won't be hidden or anything like that. We'll just leave it right here, publicly available, so you guys can give it a thumbs up, drop a comment afterwards. It's all super appreciated. So right now, we're going to take this preset called Chase and make it a lead tone. So you can see that it's using the jumped position in Nunchuck, so it's going to have that front end sparkliness that we talked about earlier. Okay, I'm going to take some of the bottom end out here, So this is obviously part of the speaker, where this is part of the amplifier. Check out what's going on with the drive pedals. You can hear that low end filter on Storm Drive makes a massive difference. Loads of bottom end. Bear in mind, the jump is on, so that already is like adding some excitement in the amp. What was I talking about earlier? With all the EQ, you can hear when I pull out some of the mids, the top end, it's like it's all interacting. Listen to that. If I just drop the mids from like there to 0, you hear the treble react. This is what I'm talking about, and I know I've said this about 3 or 4 times, but the amount of time we will spend on these EQ circuits and amp and tubes and making sure like they behave in certain ways, I can't emphasize that enough, you know, because it would be so easy for us to go capture a tone and say, okay, let's add a post-digital EQ. You know, there's 10 a penny those. There's plugin companies all over the place coming up, and they're making these plugins, slapping a skin on. It's an amp capture, put a digital EQ on. You think you're adjusting the bass, the treble, and the stuff like that, like a real amp. You're not. You're really just adjusting a very crude digital EQ. So with the Polychrome plugins, we really spend a lot of time on the circuitry. I do the majority of the amp designs with some of the amazing tools that Luca creates. So with the two of us, he gives me a plethora of tools. I go crazy. And then we create unique amps. That's, you know, another thing that we do. We don't do one-to-one copies, you know, being there. Everyone's done it. Everyone's had, you know, 20 versions of the same amp over the years, you know. So, yes, in the case of Nunchuck, we're definitely taking inspiration, but ultimately it's inspired by, but it's a custom amp design like all of the other amplifiers. These are amps that you won't get in any other plugin or hardware for that matter. So let's finish off just jumping in and making that a lead tone. Yeah, that's working. Bit of reverb delay, my favorite. Pong, filtered, ducked, bit of feedback. Bit more volume just to compensate, because as we've added some delay, we've lost a tiny bit of level. Same for the reverb. I love to filter out some of that mid-range to keep the notes really cutting through. And what was my trick that I liked to do before? Really a little bit of compression to make those reverb and delay tails pop up. There we go. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, a little bit more ambient, I think. Ambience. A little bit more bass. I think we've probably cut a little bit too much somewhere. Okay, look at that. Good ears. So we've got some filtering here. Let's take that off. So that's actually a really good point. So as we're using Storm Drive, this filter here is basically cutting away the low end. So what you want to do is think about, okay, I've cut away a lot of the front end bass, but I might need to compensate somewhere else after the amplifier. So the reason why you would cut some low end from the front end of your signal is to tighten it up. So again, if we go back to Storm Drive and we take that filter right to the bottom, so it's letting all the bass through, you hear how woolly it is. That could be really cool. You might want that, but in a lead tone, we want that aggression. Did you hear how it just opened up just with the filter alone? Right? So yeah, so around about there, but the point being, if we're using something like Storm Drive, which is filtering a lot of the bass out, that's probably why this preset has more bass here, but it was just losing a little bit because it had even more filtered here. But I think that works very well there. Try a little bit more unfiltered reverb and delay. Just a little bit more volume, and I think that would work really well. We could really push the ambience. Bit more of that. Again, that could work right there. So that's taking the chase preset and modifying it into a lead preset. So really, really cool. So let's get into the questions here. Sean's asking or saying, where's the chat gone that I had from Ecamm? Okay, I realize this may be difficult to answer since you can't hear the reference track, but do you have any advice on how to tweak a tone to blend riff guitar into synth heavy track? For me, it's about creating that big time space. Yeah, so if you have a synth heavy track, and let's say we use the same chase preset, Often I really like to use more aggressive cuts. So what I mean is here we're kind of very, very gentle. Here, nothing is being used in the speaker. Obviously, the speaker itself has a lot of processing. Save it. Okay, we will save it. We'll call it the Chase Rad Brad lead. No, it's too long. Chase Rad lead. There we go. It is saved and it's called the Chase Rad lead. So when we do an update, we'll include the Chase Rad lead. Okay, so I would probably have more of an aggressive. I wouldn't have spread because I want something a bit tighter. I think wide would work better. I also think if you want something like super aggressive, that's where Nutcracker really comes in. So let's use that. And what I would do is I would have something wide. Definitely love a bit of Killgate for that super aggressive. Let's say we use Storm Drive here too. Let's try some of the speaker chains. I love the energy of that one, the first one. Okay, so then I would think, how can we make some like real big dents in that frequency response? And I think you could do that with the Shape EQ, but I think speaker voice might be the way to go. But even that big 6 dB cut or so here, maybe a bit of compensation. You could hear like something that would sit on top of that. Like right in the mid-range could be like the perfect pocket for a synth. And if you wanted to smooth it out, pull some of that 5K out of it. Maybe aggressively put a big hole in those lower mids. Yeah. That's like quite an exciting rhythm tone. Like you can imagine, like if we were tuned down. Big synth melody line right in the top of that. Oh, let's get Killgate really working. We're in that sort of real dark, heavy cyber type of beats right there. We could even go with a split. Someone was asking Joseph earlier about the Tosin type of bit of compression on that to really level out those hammer-ons. We're right there. So you can hear like Nutcracker just naturally leans into that, and with not a lot of tweaking, we've got sounds that are like maybe fitting the type of vibe that you were thinking about with the heavy synth track. Well, I like that a lot. I like that. Nutcracker's just, it does that. type of thing very, very well. Right, so that was a bit of a tangent. Let's finish up here. Yes, the recording will be after. Hi, I was wondering what happened to all your Kiesel guitars. Ignore this if you don't want to talk about it. Much respect. Most of them are in the office. Yeah, so in the office, there's we got enough guitars in this room, and some of them are floating around in different people's houses and whatnot. So there we go. I think we are all caught up on the chat. Should we just hang for just a moment and see if there's any final questions? And if you guys like this format where we are specifically jumping into the plugins and the tones and all that side of things, let me know, either in the comments of this live video. I'll leave it up publicly available afterwards, so it's not buried. And maybe you can jump on the Polychrome Discord if you're new here. So that's polychromedsp.com/Discord. Super easy to get to, a great community if you're new to all this and you're like, I want to know what audio interface I should buy, or how do you do this with MIDI? How do I get this type of tone? There's some amazing, lovely people there. I'm there, the Polychrome team's there, the moderators are there, so you're in a great bit of company and great hands there. Love that this popped up today, even if I couldn't get... yes. Yes, that's good to see you too. Welcome here. So let's hang around for just another minute or so, and then it might be time for a cup of tea and to see what Luca has been cooking up. Because as mentioned, we've got an amazing spring and summer lineup coming. Speaking of spring, if you have not picked up Nutcracker, Nunchuck, or anything like that, head to the website polychromedsp.com. The spring sale is active right now, so it's a great opportunity to pick up these amps. And yeah, let's see what's going on. Major likes the format. I wish I had more questions. That's all right. There's quite a lot of rambling about tones and stuff like that, so this is this is all good. Okay, Chris, thumbs up. Okay, great. Well, let's for now aim for the last Thursday of every month, and we'll use Discord to kind of get a feel for what might be a good topic for next month. And now that we are all set up to stream on the Polychrome channel, let's try and make a good use of that monthly stream and take it from there. So I am curious about how to use the plugins in the DAW. As an example, can use the Nunchuck amp only and the output of the signal sent to Graphene. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So let me show you that real quick. So I'm using Ableton, but this could be whatever DAW you like. When you purchase a plugin, you get standalone, so you don't need any DAW. You can just run it from the desktop and it runs, no problem. But you can see right here today, I have 4 plugins in a line just because I wanted to start off with just the defaults. You know, if I loaded my live stream settings, we'd have all sorts of things happening. But for example, let's say I have Nunchuck here. And let's say I wanted to use the input effects from Graphene because Graphene has Explode Plus. So I could double click the speaker, double click the EQ, double click the post effects, turn off the amplifier, and now the only thing that's active is this guy. Maybe turn off the gate as well. So what that means is inside of Ableton, I could say, okay, I'm going to put Graphene in front of Nunchuck. Or Lumis or whatever, but let's just keep it Nunchuck. There's my DI. That's the sound with Nunchuck. Turn on Graphene. And we'll use an octane, and of course that could be the post effect. So if you really love the reverbs in Lumis, for example, because we have 3 algorithms, Dream is just such a lovely longer ambient. Of course you could drag that to the end of the chain, Or do the same thing in Lumis, where we turn off the amplifier, double click each of the sections, and now we just have the reverb on. Using the reverb from Lumis. Not a problem. We could do hold. So yep, you can mix and match, not a problem. Maybe an old school shred club into the new format. Yeah, this is a little bit different to the shred club. Anyway, guys, if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments of the stream and I'll get to them later. Or head to the Discord, polychromedsp.com/Discord. Sounds like I've got the old ice cream man outside. So with that being said, it might be time for tea and ice cream, everyone. Thank you, everyone, and let's do this again real soon. Is it possible to save the multi-plugin as presets? Yes. In Ableton, I'll show you one more thing before I head off here. This might differ per DAW, but if I say, for example, had these two plugins together, and I was like, oh, that sounds great, I could go Command G to create a rack, and then I could hit this save button down here, and that would save both of the plugins together as one chain. You might still need to save the presets individually inside of the plugins, but that would be a quick way of like recalling or moving the entire two plugins around, just like that. So Reaper, Cubase, they all have the similar thing, but a slightly different way of doing it. Again, if you're struggling with any of this and it's new to you, feel free to join us on the Discord. And once again, that's polychromedsp.com/Discord. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I hope it was useful. Don't forget, if you're watching later, please do give the video a thumbs up and leave us a comment. And we'll see you real soon with some pretty awesome products. In the meantime, make sure you pick up Nunchuck, Lumis, Graphene and Nutcracker, Hypertune, and all the rest of them. And I'll see you later. Cheers, guys.